So I'm here at Watford Training Ground with Andy Scott to talk to him about his new job. So first off, Andy, just explain to me your new role here and what it consists of on a daily basis.
Well, the title is Sporting Director. I first came here in November 17 as UK Football Recruitment Director. We didn't have any. We had a very strong international recruitment department that specialised. We've got a very strong recruitment team in South America, and obviously the owner owns Udinese as well in Italy, so they use those scouts, and we scout in Spain and Italy and across Europe, but we didn't really have anything in the UK. We had a lot of success with bringing people like Andre Gray and Will Hughes into the club, and they've been really good for us. And obviously with Brexit on the horizon, we were looking at British players being a better way of going in terms of recruitment, because they understand the league, they understand the amount of games, the intensity, haven't got to settle in language and everything like that. So we wanted to have some sort of balance within the side of international players and UK players. But part of my role was to look at the academy, look at how we were going to structure the academy to try and develop players from there, because that was a route for our recruitment that we haven't been exploiting. So looked at the structure of that. We've changed a few things around with that. So that was the initial thing, and then it sort of just things have latched onto it from there. To become a sporting director, I look after the first team staff, players, anything that goes on to the medical side of it, sports science, nutrition, physios, the catering staff. We've got a new dome that we've built, so we've got all the maintenance of that we've got to look after. So it's just generally making sure the training ground works properly, everyone's happy, that there's no issues, that allows the first team coach to concentrate on coaching the side and getting the results really.
Cool. So how closely do you work with Filippo Giraldi? How does your job differ to his?
So he's a technical director. He works very closely with Gino Pozzo, who's the owner of the football club. So Filippo sort of basically is in control of all the international scouts. He's got a team of scouts that, as I say, work all over the world really, and he's in control of those. He's got a scouting coordinator who basically all the reports that go into him, the top players that the scouts see go to Filippo, and he has the say over those. Myself and him, obviously we speak very often. He's here probably at the training ground from Wednesday or Thursday right through to Saturday, and goes to first team games. My job involves going and watching other teams. So Filippo's quite involved with the first team coach, speaks to him about players we've got, issues with players. I do that if he's not here. So we sort of work hand in hand, so that there's a presence from the senior management team every day at the training ground, so that we can deal with issues. But he's obviously worked with Gino a long time. He's brought some good players into the club, and he's well trusted, and but we sort of dovetail really with our roles.
Cool. So what changes, or what have you brought with you to Watford since being at Brentford, obviously?
I think that from the recruitment side of it, we're a little bit more statistical based. We're a little bit more analytical in how we do our reports. I've redesigned the reports for our system so that we measure it based on the score, so that we can compare and contrast different positions, different players in those positions, different age groups. Whereas Filippo and his scouts are more about feel and trust and belief in what they're seeing. But there's certainly two arguments to it. I think both work from my point of view. Scouting, I think that you've got to have a balance with an analytical, statistical side and what you're actually seeing, and trusting your scouts to actually know the profile of the player that you're looking to bring to the football club, and then making sure that the statistical analysis that we've got is relevant to those positions and what the profile you're looking for. So I brought a lot of that. I think that management-wise, just dealing with people here, I think the way you deal with them, you've got to have good people around you, but if you treat them properly and respect, and it goes both ways, then it has a healthy environment and people work better in a healthier environment. But you know, I learn every day off people what they're doing. You see different techniques, different way of working. We've got a lot of Spanish people here now. We've got players from all over the world. You know, so you deal with people differently. The culture's different. The way that they like to be spoken to, the way they speak to you, the way they eat, the way they behave, the family, everything like that. You've got to take into consideration. You can't have a closed mindset. You've got to be very open to understanding how people live their lives and what gets the best out of them. You know, part of my job is to ensure that I help that everybody on the pitch on a Saturday is as well prepared as possible, and if that means them being happy, so you know, they might be living in a hotel and we go and speak to the hotel, make sure that the food's right for them, the beds are right and got the right environment, and the family come over that they're happy, and try and control the controllables within, you know, our realm really.
You find yourself doing that a lot then, you know, ringing up hotels and doing the little bits just to keep the float, you know.
Yeah, we've got a player liaison department that I'm sort of in, I manage, but obviously working with the hotels, working with the people that book the rooms, working with the management team at the hotels to make sure that, you know, the feedback we're getting from the players we're giving to them, and the things that we need are already in place before there's any issues. So yeah, I mean, it's on a day-to-day basis. You could be speaking to, you know, 20, 30, 40 different departments, or you know, companies or hotels or whatever. As well as that, you're doing work with the agents. You're trying to recruit players. You're trying to find out information about players that you're bringing in. You're working on their personality. So you know, it's varied. You know, today came in, did some work on succession planning for recruitment for the owner and the chairman in the next few seasons, showing where the squad's going to be. Watched training, spoke to the coach about QPR. We got them Friday, so I did a report on them, went to the game. I've got a recruitment meeting with the academy and first team staff after lunch, and I've got a meeting with the medical guys about the system that they use, about, you know, whether it's producing what we want to produce, how we're going to get our GPS data on there that is aligned with our medical data and the training data. So it's a very varied role on a day-to-day basis. And tonight I'm going to our Youth Cup game, so there's always something happening.
Very busy.
Yeah, but it's, you know, it's a good role for me. It's, you know, I'm learning from every department, so it's enhancing my knowledge of Premier League football clubs and how they work.
So what Watford's been doing specifically to like find homegrown players, nurture them, get them ready for first team football?
Well, we've got an academy recruitment team that we've just set up, and we're trying to work out the best way of doing that. Specifically for our academy, we're looking at 15 and 16 year olds at the moment. We're short in those areas. We want athletes. We want good people. We want people that can learn and have got the right mindset. But you know, when you look at Premier League players, they're all athletes. They're all physically strong. They're quick, technically good. So that's a basic requirement. So we go out and we look at players that are going to be released from the big clubs. We look at players at Category 3 level that we think would be better than what we've got and give us a chance of getting our Premier League side. From a first team point of view, we look at under 18 players, under 23s, first team. So we'll cover anything from Conference South up to the Premier League. We'll look at players that are out of contract. So it's a wide ranging view. Obviously we've got a positional requirements for next year that we need to fulfil. And then what happens is we collate all that information, we put it to the senior management with Filippo. He's got his international players, I've got UK players. We look at them, we share information, so that my scouts will look on video of his players and vice versa, because if there's one that's better than what we've already got, then we'll push that one as well. So you're always looking. There's always young players that are coming through in the Football League. You've got to be quick. You've got to be trying to anticipate who's going to come through. You've got to work with agents. You've got to preempt where you're going to be. You've got to see if you can, probably as a club like Watford, we have to take a bit of a gamble, as we did with Ben Wilmot from Stevenage. A lot of clubs were looking at him, but we decided that he would be a good fit for us, and we signed him. Since then, he's played for the first team 6 times already. He's now on loan at Udinese in Serie A, so his value's gone up. He's now with England under 20s, so we have to take a gamble, but it's a calculated gamble based on what we see and what we think is going to come through.
So, how much does a player being homegrown take factor when you're comparing two players? You said you and Filippo might compare one player to another. If they're around the same level but one's homegrown, is that definitely one that you go for?
Yeah, I mean, with the Premier League rules at the moment, you have a 25-man squad, 17 of which are foreign players, and 8 have got to be homegrown. So the more homegrown players you've got, clearly it gives you more freedom to go and sign foreign players and have that quota in your squad. Whether Brexit changes that, we've yet to find out, but certainly having homegrown players and under 21 players is going to be a massive boost to having your squad, because they don't count towards your 25-man Premier League squad. So you can have a 30-man squad effectively, and 10, 12 of them be homegrown under 21. So it just gives you more capability to have a better squad, more balance, knowing that you're not just signing a homegrown player just so they can fit in your squad. And that's what you find with the top sides, like Chelsea have notoriously always signed a number 3 or number 4 goalkeeper. Man City have done the same, who's British, homegrown, because it ticks the box. Rob Green, Richard Wright at City, you see it time and time again. Whereas we can we're looking now at our recruitment from June 2020. So we know how the squad is going to be looking in general, unless we make sell players. But if we sell players, it means that we've made a lot of money and we can go and realign the way the squad's shaping up. But certainly at the moment we've got last summer we signed Domingos Quina and Ben Wilmot, both homegrown players. We had Andre Gray, Troy Deeney, Will Hughes, Andrew Mariappa, Craig Cathcart, Tom Cleverley, Ben Foster. So we've got a large amount of UK players that fulfil our criteria. So it means that our focus hasn't specifically got to be on UK players, but just the best players.
Okay. Do you feel that the Premier League squad registration rules are too strict, too lenient? The 25, 17, 8, is that?
There's got to be a limit somewhere, and I think that the greater parameters you give clubs, the bigger clubs are going to exploit, which means it's going to be limited for the smaller clubs. Yeah, we can always go and get a couple more players, but realistically it's hard enough at the moment with you've got 25 players, 26 players all training to try and give them game time, keep them happy. We've seen with the big clubs the amount of players they've got out on loan. What you would find is the bigger clubs just collecting players to make sure the other teams couldn't have them. So in terms of competition, I don't think changing rules would help. If you've got a plan and you've got an idea how you want to structure what you do moving forward, then I think that you adhere to the rules and you know what the rules are going to be, and you plan ahead. Whereas I think that a lot of clubs just throw money at it and realise that they've got to bring a homegrown player in or got a couple of spaces spare, and they just go and buy who they want. That's not the way we're going to do it here, and we can do it. We haven't got unlimited funds, but in the 4 years that the owner's been in charge of the club, we've seen the progress that's made, not just on the pitch but off the pitch. And that all goes hand in hand, but that's because you've got a strategy, a clear structure in place, and can build on that.
Yeah. How do you see the development of English players changing over time in the next few years? As in, do you see more going abroad? Do you see more staying at lower level until they are ready for first team at Premier League level?
We've certainly noticed here now more and more players on agents from the big clubs, your Chelseas, Man Cities, are looking at pathways into first team now, realising that it's not all about the money. They want to play football. Certainly, we've seen it with Jadon Sancho. He went to City, and obviously you've got the Dortmund, and you've got Reece Nelson's out on loan out there. You know, several other players. You've got players from Chelsea who've gone to Monaco and various other places around Europe because they're going to give a chance. Some clubs will give young players a chance, but you know, Callum Hudson-Odoi is a prime example. You know, on the verge of probably England call up in and around the first team at Chelsea, but not going to play regularly. Yet Bayern Munich, one of the biggest clubs in the world, prepared to sign him for a lot of money, and they will play him every week. And players are getting clever to that now. They're realising that yes, they can earn a lot of money but never play first team football, or they can go and play abroad or go and play somewhere where they're going to get a pathway, and then their money automatically goes up. They get England recognition. You know, Mason Mount had to go on loan to Derby to get an England squad, but will he play for Chelsea? Unlikely. So they are starting to get a little bit more intelligent about how they structure their contracts, what they sign, how long they sign for, and agents. You know, the wages and the money in the Premier League for every club now is very, very good, and so players can play at a Watford or a Fulham or a Palace and earn very good money, but also the chances are they're going to play, the chances are they're going to go and be signed by another top 4 club and earn the money further down their career. If they don't get the opportunity, they're never going to reach those heights. So there's a definite swing in the mentality of younger players, I think, at bigger clubs.
Yeah, bit of a two-part question. What would you do if you were a young English footballer, say at Chelsea, at Man City, couldn't get into the first team? What would be your way out? And compare that to obviously your way into the football world, just being at Sutton United and then jumping straight up to Sheffield United.
Yeah, I mean, well, it's a long time since that happened. That was in '92, and my wages at Sheffield United in the Premier League were less than probably a first-year pro earns now. Whereas, I mean, I think if I was at a big club, that if you're 18 years old and you're offered £15,000-20,000 a week, and your background is, your parents, earn that in a year, and they're offering you a 4 or 5 year deal, it's very, very difficult to turn that down. You can financially secure your whole family for life, and has a big bearing on your thought process, and rightly so. I understand that. I do understand that. And it takes a brave young lad to say, I'm not going to sign that, I'm going to take my chance out in the big wide world, and if it doesn't work out, then you've got to answer to your parents, and you've got to answer to yourself that you haven't earned that money. So I do get that. I think that they're becoming aware now, they're a lot more confident in themselves and belief that they can go and play at Premier League level. Domingos Quina left West Ham. We signed him because he wasn't going to get a chance there, and now he's played eight appearances for the first team. For Watford, so it's proved to be the right thing for him. He could have gone to Barcelona, Real Madrid, and sat in their B team, but he wanted to play football. So it takes a lot of courage to turn down those contracts, and you've got to have a good support network around you, your family. Your agent's got to give you good information and good support, and you've got to discuss how the plan going forward for your career. But if you want to play football, you've got to play football young, and if you get out there and if you're good enough, you're going to earn the money. There's no doubt about that.
Do you think other Premier League clubs will bring in a director such as yourself to have a primary focus on the UK, or do you think it may be a one-off, and maybe you need to see how this goes in the next few years for other clubs to maybe follow suit?
I think that different clubs are structured differently. The ownership obviously dictates how that works. Some have got technical directors, some have got directors of football, some have got sporting directors. I think that in different clubs, the director of football, sporting director, or technical director role is different depending on their relationship with the coach and obviously the owner of the club. you know, this is a club that's run by the owner, the recruitment's done by the club, and the coach basically plays the players that the club brings in. Whereas you go to other clubs and the coach has every say over everything, and that causes issues further down the line when he leaves. You've got staff, you've got players that the club don't want, on wages and contracts that you can't cope with. So I think it's a sustainable model what we're doing here. Whether that works to be able to do it with other clubs, I don't know. I think that, you know, you look at the bigger clubs and they could sign the players that we're signing, but they would rather wait until they play for Watford and then sign them from Watford. That's just the way they work. Whereas from a financial point of view, Watford can't do that. So we have, like I said before, we have to take a gamble. You have to rely on the people that work for you to improve the players that you've got and get them to the level that you think you can get them to. But every club's different. It's a foreign model, the director of football sporting director role. I think there's only a few clubs now that haven't got one of those in the Premier League, but our roles could sort of vary significantly, you know, between clubs.
So that's the main bulk of the questions. If at any point you want to stop me at this point, just going on too long, let me know. How did the January transfer window go for you? Just gone.
Yeah, January was pretty quiet for us. We sort of overlapped with Nazy a little bit, and they've just changed coach. We had a couple of players, several players in our squad that weren't featuring and weren't happy, wanted to go and play football, so we moved 3 players out to Udinese, so that makes that process a lot easier. So they went out there. We had a couple of options on other players moving out on loan, but when we looked at the squad, we're still in the FA Cup, we're still performing well in the league. We didn't want to leave ourselves short. In terms of bringing players in, we're always looking for good players. If a good player came up that was value for us, we would have done it, but nothing really fell into place. We had a couple of options with a couple of centre backs that didn't quite work out, but that's the nature of every January transfer window. You know, you might be looking at, you know, we worked solidly all through January. Just in the case that something might have happened, you get inquiries for your players. You work out whether it's good business to let them go, not let them go on loan or not. So it's always changing the whole, you know, way that you set your squad out, and it might change if one player leaves. You might have to do something else and work quickly. But fortunately, it was, in terms of ins and outs, it was relatively quiet, but it didn't mean that it was quiet in terms of the workload that we had.
So is it more of a case of trying to keep key players? I know I've heard that Doucouré's been linked to PSG, there's been a couple of potential outs. Was it trying to hold on to what you had, or? Yeah,
I mean, January's always a good time to sell because you can maximise the value of your player, but it's only a good time to sell if you've got a replacement already at the club, because if you don't, you have to go and buy someone and you're paying over the odds as well, so the value in terms of correlation to what you get in and what you're paying out doesn't work out. You know, like I said before, we've got a plan of what we want to do. We want to bring younger players through. We've got players in our system that if players left, we knew we could move them through. So Doucouré is a prime example. You know, as you said, PSG, a number of clubs are looking at him. In the summer, if we decide to sell him there, it may be that we don't replace him because we've got Tom Cleverley, we've got Nathaniel Chalobah, we've got Domingos Quina, we've got Ben Wilmot, Etienne Capoue here. You know, we've got a plethora of midfield players that can fill that role, which means that with money we get in, we can choose where we use it. Chances are that we will go and buy someone before we sell Doucouré, so we can get value for that player, knowing that we're going to get that money in. It's a very similar model to how Brentford worked when I was there. It's not that I brought it in; it's just the way they work, and it seems to you know, to be productive. We haven't spent huge amounts on transfer fees. Bought Richarlison for 11 million, sold him for 50. You know, Doucouré came in for minimal. You know, people talk about 50 million for him. You know, it's very easy to get caught up with just saying, "I will just pay it." You've got to look at how it works for the squad and balances finances, and to be able to, you ultimately you need to stay in the Premier League and perform well in the Premier League, which touch wood is what we're doing, and if we continue to do that, finishing in the top 7, 8 not only gives you a chance to get in the Europa League, but also gives you better attraction of bringing players in to recruit players. They see that you're a top 10 side in the Premier League. It's so competitive that players don't really want to go to sides that could go down. They want to be a Premier League player. So to finish in the top 7, 8 would be a big boost for us in terms of recruitment.
Yeah. So talking about Watford's budget, how far do you think you can go with the budget you've got compared to the other clubs around you in terms of reputation? I mean, like you say, you've been doing great in the league, and business-wise you've been doing well, but how far could you go, do you think, in the next few years?
Realistically, with how we are as a club, 7th is the best we can do, and you're looking at, and that's including obviously the top 6 are the top 6, and you just can't compete financially, but Everton, Leicester, teams like that, who are established Premier League sides. Leicester won the league, Everton, spending a lot of money. Teams like Fulham who are struggling at the bottom spent £100 million in the summer. So the beauty of this club is the way that there's consistency in the squad. There's a plan in moving ahead. We don't go and change loads of players. We know what we want to do, and so budget has less of a bearing on the squad than it would do if you want to change all your players. We've got a bottom 6 budget. There's that's pretty plain for everyone to see, but because we do things properly and there's a plan, and the owner's got a very clear vision of how he wants to run it, then we've got, as much as we don't really have consistency with coaches, because Javi's the first one who signed a new contract and lasted more than a year, the actual club itself continues moving in the right direction, and the coach that comes in just has to work within the club framework, whereas you see your Evertons, and they change coach, and then they bring loads of players, and they've got 14 players out on loan who have got 3-4 years left on their contract, who have cost them fortunes, and there's no strategy to how they do things. So you can beat teams with a good strategy and a good plan and structure of how you work.
Does it help having an affiliate club like Udinese? Just like you say, you've managed to, people who want first team football straight out to Udinese. Do you ever look at, say, like the Udinese squad and think we could possibly bring in some of their players that are going? I mean, Rodrigo de Paul is a brilliant player.
Yeah.
I know a lot of big European clubs are after him. Is that a possibility in the future to get him at Watford?
Yeah, I mean, with players over there, I mean, we have to, it's timing, because obviously Watford can benefit from players like that, but when you get, like your Barcelonas and your Real Madrid and your Juventus, isn't that they come and want to sign those players, then it becomes a business model where you've got to sell them to the highest bidder, and that isn't going to be Watford. But certainly, I mean, the Championship, the club used Udinese a lot more. There was a lot more players coming from Udinese to help Watford out. But now Watford have gone above Udinese in terms of standing really in the football world. So there's more players going from Watford to Udinese to help them get games or to help Udinese out than the other way around. But certainly if Udinese have a top player that can benefit Watford, then that helps. Clearly with the work permit rules at the moment, we can sign players from outside the EU, bring them to Udinese and get them there and loan them out from there. Got several players from South America that can't come to the UK at the moment, but they are on loan in Spanish clubs or Italian clubs. Wait 3 years, get their passport, and then they can come to the UK. We've got a young player called Adalberto Peñaranda who was on loan at Malaga.
Yeah.
Venezuelan international, really talented young boy.
Brilliant.
Got his passport in October and came straight into our first team squad. So that is very helpful. Gives you a lot more options in who you can recruit, and the relationship between Udinese and Watford, obviously, because we've got the same owner, it means that the way that we work is very similar. So the tie-in there is a lot more beneficial, and you're seeing a lot more clubs in the Premier League doing it now. Leicester have got an affiliate club. they're starting to see that as a benefit, you know, in their recruitment and in use of players. And Brighton have just bought a new club as well, so they're seeing that there's a way around it.
How do you see the development of Ben Wilmot then? He's at Udinese. Was it something that he asked for? Was it something that you said, "Oh, you should go to Udinese"? Should he have stayed in England potentially?
Well, so about a year ago, Ben was playing against Morecambe in League Two. Played about 10 games for Stevenage in League Two as a centre back. He came here. The idea was, let's look at him through pre-season. If he's not at the level we want him to be, then we'll get him a good loan and he can go and play league football. He was outstanding in pre-season. The coach loves him. Has looked at him as a central midfield player. He's played all the cup games and been excellent. Made a number of appearances in the Premier League, FA Cup. But in January, we had several Championship clubs that were looking at him and were interested in taking him. The coach didn't want him to let him out on loan, but we've got 6 central midfield players. Doucouré was just coming back from his injury, and for a young player who's probably only played 20 odd games in his whole career, to keep him just because he's training well wasn't probably the best route for him. We wanted him to go and get football, and just experience different way and grow up, and sort of enhance him, just not on the pitch but off it as well. Learning different tactics, seeing different teams play. Udinese were looking for a holding midfield player, and Ben was more than willing to go. If he'd stayed, he may have played more games in the Premier League towards now the end of the season, but we're hoping that he goes to Udinese and gets 10-15 games. They've got some really good games coming up. Milan, Inter, Juventus, so he's going to be playing against top players, and hopefully come back. He's already a really level-headed lad, but it's going to help him mature. He's going to learn language. He's going to be living on his own, so it's all his personal development's going to help as well as the football side of it.
Yeah. Does this go back to my question about does it help having an affiliate? Can you keep tabs on him a lot easier? Can you speak to the manager about his playing time?
Absolutely. Obviously, Gino controls Udinese. Filippo's works there as well, and we go backwards and forwards. So the information that we're getting, we can get really good feedback. We can give feedback to the coach over there. It could put a bit of pressure on the situation if it needs to change. So it does help. Whereas over here, you're reliant on the coach or the team that they go to, playing them in the position we want them to, in the style that you want them to. At least we can control some part of his management of him over the next 6 months.
How have you enjoyed your time as a scouting role, and would you ever return back to management or coaching?
No to management. Coaching, I think that being reasonably successful at Brentford and being able to work the way that I wanted to work, and then you go to Rotherham and Aldershot, and you realise that not every club's like that, and you are just firefighting and you're trying to balance the books rather than actually coaching the players that you want to coach and having a chance of being successful. That's not really why I got into it, and leaving Aldershot, I just lost my love of doing that side of it. Still love football, and I'd always loved going out and looking at players and seeing the players that I wanted to fit into my team. So I was fortunate that Matthew Benham at Brentford owner gave me opportunity to get into the scouting side of it, and I love it. Even now I enjoy it. I would rather go and watch another game and watch a player that we look at the sign than watching us play, because I feel that I watch us train every day. I know the players, I can watch us on video, so I'd rather go and watch a player that I think would enhance the squad rather than just sort of sitting watching us play. So I love the scouting side of it. I love my job now. It's so varied. It's completely different to management. The management, your job's based on the 90 minutes on a Saturday to how well you've done. Whereas here, at least you've got a little bit more time to implement the ideas that you've got and put things into practice and manage the whole environment to help that squad do well on a Saturday.
Okay, just one or two more questions. Is there a future, do you think, for young English managers in the Premier League, or do you think it's only the high profile ex-pros that are getting the jobs, and foreigners are being brought in with good track records?
I think there's two ways looking at it. I think the ownership of clubs in the Premier League are generally foreign, and they like that foreign model where managers are underneath the director of football or sporting director or whatever, and that's how that model works, and generally foreign coaches are happy with that. There's also, you can't take a chance really, and I think the only time that British or English managers will get a chance is if they get promoted with the side in the Championship. Like Sean Dyche has come up and been with Burnley, but it's tough. It's tough. I think that certainly the way that the British managers work, when you're dealing with Premier League players, might not be the way to go, and they've got to have a knowledge of working with players from different countries, different backgrounds. They're elite sportsmen, they're multi-millionaires, they've got egos. You've got to accept that, whereas a lot of English managers come through from the lower levels and know those players and can work with British players, but when it comes to working with a different type of player, it becomes more difficult. I think tactically, we're improving, but we're still behind a little bit. There are some good managers out there, some good coaches, good British coaches. It's just having the opportunity. As we've said with younger players aren't getting the opportunity. Younger British coaches aren't getting an opportunity. That's just the way it is. But there's only 20 clubs in the Premier League. It's tough. It's a tough competition. Whether the model is looking at young UK coaches going abroad and cutting their teeth over there and looking at the tactical elements of it and working with players from different countries and then coming back to this country might give them a better chance, possibly so. But Premier League clubs and owners want to stay in the Premier League. They want to be successful. The top six want to win the league. The rest of the clubs want to finish as high as possible. So to put your faith in an untried manager is always going to be a risk.
One last question. If there was one rule, one thing, one registration, one policy you could change that would make your job easier as a technical director, what would it be?
It's a bit of a weird one, but having every member of your squad be on the bench, because we've got a strong squad, everyone's got a strong squad. If you had, as in European competition, you can have 10, 11 subs. You're not leaving players out. Players aren't getting upset they're not in the match day squad. You can put them on. You can use younger players, so that if you're winning 3-0 with 20 minutes to go, you can put a younger player on that you may never have had on the bench. It's going to improve the opportunities for them to get game time. It's going to keep the whole squad happy. You've got a 25-man squad. Why not have those spaces? It relieves a lot of pressure on the coach, the club with players, but also would give younger players an opportunity. It may be that ruling is that out of the subs you've got to have 3 under 21 players who are homegrown. That's going to give them at least an opportunity to get Premier League football. It's something we've spoken about. It's something that we've discussed about whether we bring it up at Premier League meetings and whether that's something that other clubs would endorse. But from our point of view, looking at the problems it causes when you're leaving basically first team players out because you only got 7 subs and one of them's a goalkeeper, it would help a lot more in that respect.
Okay, brilliant.
All right.
Thank you very much.
No problem at all.